Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Eileen. Hello, everybody. I don't know if you recognize me after that introduction. I was saying, who's he? I thought it would be interesting to go through this topic, the Macao Strategist, and look at like the insider's playbook, okay, for dominating the next decade of integrated resorts, because that's actually the holy grail that every one of the integrated resorts is pursuing individually. Each one of them wants to get this dead right and get the strategy right. The problem is it's really a moving goalpost. Every day it changes in Macau, whether it's an instruction from or a suggestion from Beijing, or an instruction from the Macau government, or headwinds in the competitive market. So what we're going to try and do today, I'm going to try and bring in some of the things that I've picked up over the years working with these companies, and look at the markets, how they're looking at right now around us, so they can see where does Macau stand versus some of the other gaming markets. What are they doing? Where are they going? And maybe why? And then come up with a bit of a playbook for us to follow that would keep us safe in the next few years. So what I wanted to start out with is just taking a look at the major markets that are what we would call strategic threats, or emerging and developing or fading integrated resort markets. So I have them like a traffic light system here. So the greens are go, go, go at the moment. The yellows are doing okay, or they're coming along, or they're doing their best to get to a next level. And the reds are facing some serious issues at the moment. So if we started with Las Vegas is having difficulty with volumes and numbers of people coming in and the amount of spend, but the amount of development that's going on that I'm going to show you some of the examples of is really tremendous. So they're not stopping. The cranes are not coming down. When it comes to Singapore, you saw they've new development plan. We're going to go through that a little bit for the 2 integrated resorts there. That's really remarkable. Philippines is hot at the moment, even though they're very small and medium-sized casinos. There's an awful lot of movement going on, so we're going to explore that. Vietnam, they're pulling billions out of all sorts of places at the moment to put them into new integrated resorts in Vietnam. So they're going to be interesting because they're going seriously at it. And they're doing integrated public-private developments there that are going to make a big difference with the airports and everything else that they're putting in place. We have South Korea, redevelopment going on in there. Inspire put a bit of a fire under some of the other competitors, and so they're starting to reinvent themselves at the moment. And Japan, lo and behold, they're saying now if this new prime minister comes in, the 2 other integrated resorts may come back onto the playing field. So we talked a little bit about that. Cambodia, it's not looking good at the moment. And Thailand, cease and desist for the moment. So let's just skip through it and take a look at the visitation numbers, right? We're all back here from 2002. You look at the numbers back then and look at the numbers now. We're doing quite well. We're back to about 85% of the pre-COVID levels. But you see the big spike there in 2013 when the yellow line, the revenues there were wildly out of control with the junket play and all the VIP play that was going on. That's never been reached again since that's been pulled under control to a great extent. But the physical numbers are coming back, but different format and different type of customer. Current landscape as we see it now is the recovery trajectory is about, as we said, 80 to 85% of the pre-pandemic levels, right? But it's now driven by the mass market. It's not the VIP and the junket anymore. Total shift in the demographics. The VIP segment is now only 22% of the total GGR versus 46 back in the good old days. And the non-gaming growth is showing stronger recovery, but in different ways. We're going to go through that a little bit later. And the regional competition, as we said, there's different markets coming up and giving us a bit of a run for our money. But the political and the physical location that we have is always going to keep Macau a unique proposition. So I honestly don't think from the outset that any other jurisdiction is going to hurt us in the long run when it comes to mass. Once we keep our nose clean, follow the regulations, do what we're asked, we'll have a steady flow from mainland of mass players for many, many years to come. And the penetration rate is so low right now, it can go for years. We haven't even hit certain cities, as you well know. So basically what I'm talking about a little bit today is beyond the baccarat table. And the new main event in town is no longer just non-gaming being an amenity. It's going to be, and it's been asked to be positioned as the main attraction. That's where the big adjustment problem is coming along, because all of the IRs are out there diligently trying to increase their non-gaming spend and revenue, spend in development and in revenue, but the customer isn't necessarily reacting the way they would like. And there's a lot of mismatches in what's being offered and what the customer is expecting. So we're going to go through that a little bit now, because there's good reasons for that. But what we're going to go through and talk about a little bit now is the untapped frontier, which is the entertainment and sports to a great level, retail, MICE, and strategic alliances and partnerships. Because the golden age of Macau, I don't think is behind us. I think it's right in front of us. But it needs us to build it on a very diversified foundation. So before we get ahead of ourselves, I think there's a thing that I believe is forgotten again and again. When I went to Las Vegas in 1997, I went to Caesar's Palace, and there was a firm conviction among the team at Caesar's that they were the best in the world. Nobody could compete with them. And it was ingrained in the culture and the philosophy and the training. However, there were developments popping up all around them that were far superior, but they were blind to that fact. And I think that we can get quite blinker visioned here in Macau, thinking we're the be-all and the end-all and what's available in the world. But we have to pull our head up out of the sand and take a look around a little bit every now and then. So let's just take a look at an overview again of Vegas and where they are. When the diversification happened here, I'm firmly of the belief that the Macau government wanted to create a Vegas-style market, which is, as you see in 2025, is 75% non-gaming, 25% gaming. That's still a wish, a hope, a dream for Macau, I believe, because it seems much more wholesome and a much more favorable way to make the money as opposed to the demon gaming. But if you look at the numbers there, what they're doing it and generating those money with, you've got 40 million visitors, similar to what we're doing here, but they've got 150,000 rooms to do it with in all different room categories, from the top luxury to very simple accommodations. But it works for them. But you see a steady growth over those years. That's all the way back to, when was that? Way back over the 20 years there. You see a steady growth with a few corrections. So there's some lessons to be learned, but they continue to diversify. There was a few slow years there when nothing new changed or came to the market, but then you start seeing things like the Sphere popping along. You hear a lot of criticism, oh, they spent 2.8 billion, then they're not making money yet. You know, I think that's the people who did the analysis of the Sands when we opened saying that, because I think it was the only time ever when a casino was opened for 250 million and made the money back in a year. That was never done before, ever. Before that, it was years of payback. And we're talking about more of a reality check here. It's going to take a bit more money to make it back to 2.8 billion if it's not gaming. But it's a phenomenal product. 18,500 people could fit in there. It was a great residency from little band from Dublin in there for a year. It did very well, the U2. And people are loving it now. They looked at it in just outside London. They were trying to plan for it for a number of years now to bring a Sphere. And it almost got there, and then planning just stopped it at the end. I don't know if it's going to be revived. It would be great if it could. But Abu Dhabi jumped in. We want it. So they're jumping right on there. So there's a number of other jurisdictions grabbing these things and bringing them in and making them happen. they really started working on the sportification and the sports washing, they call it in Middle East. But the Allegiant Stadium is another one, 1.9 billion for the home of the Raiders. And this is an incredible place. You know, they've got 8,000 club seats, which are really high-end experiences, and these 127 suites, which are just incredible. You go in there and you just wined and dined during the whole event. And so the whole thing of corporate entertainment has a fabulous place to go and spend the money on their client. And if you look at normal stadiums that don't do this, they're losing out on a huge amount of revenue. It's a huge difference to the bottom line. They've done the same in the T-Mobile Arena to an extent, a lot cheaper, bargain, 375 million only for their 20,000 seats. But they've lots of these luxury suites and party zones and private boxes and all of this. And it's another multi-purpose where you can do the NHL, the Hockey League, the NBA, concerts, boxing, MMA. And this is a good example of a strategic alliance between MGM, one of the big gaming players, and AEG, who have been in the entertainment business for many, many years. So very good, solid, positive strategic alliance. Then you look at the Grand Prix Plaza that's put in there. It just makes it much more exciting, much safer, much better venue, and a facility that allows you to leverage the returns much, much better. Then they get a little bit creative with this Area 15, which is an immersive district, a lot of art and virtual reality and all of the more high-tech and latest and greatest in entertainment elements, and very flexible space. And of course, Paul Stimon can't be held down. He's working with a new partner now. He's designing the LVXP Resort and Arena. This one is going to be focused as an NBA ready. So they've got a specific team in mind and everything else. But they're really aiming for this 2,600 room place to be the absolute state of the art in MICE and entertainment and in retail to try and knock everything else out of the water. They've learned a few tricks around the world and they're bringing some of them home now. So Vegas is really not slowing down. Singapore has done tremendously with the two integrated resorts, as you know, with Marina Bay Sands and Resort World Sentosa. What I think is remarkable is that the government sat down and did a real private public collaboration on this, where they said, come forward and tell me what you're going to do to increase the business. The tourism numbers aren't enough. The MICE numbers aren't enough. We want more non-gaming spend, etc. And they kept saying no, and they kept working with them back and forward to come up with a really solid plan until they made them both commit to basically the same spend again that they did originally. So they're putting in Marina Bay another 4.5 billion and 5 billion in Resort World Sentosa. And it's really remarkable. It's going to be over the next few years to build it all out. But you're talking about 15,000 seat arena, standard MICE space, etc. You got all of the Universal Studio expansions and aquariums. I'll show you some of the details here. So in what they're called Marina Bay Sands IR2, it's really focusing on complementing and enhancing what the resort had before. So if you think about the three towers that were originally built in one specific room, a specific room configuration, that they found out didn't have enough super high-end VIPs. So they started to reconfigure those three towers to bring in more suites and more luxury. And in the new tower that's coming along, the roof deck was really great, but it didn't give them enough square footage to do what they needed. So this one has a multiple layer of pool decks on it. So it's going to be super high net worth individual spaces. And so what they're doing there is they're bringing the average daily rate way up and the RevPAR way up for each of the available rooms. And you're seeing a bit of a replica of that here in Macau, whereas we need more rooms in Macau. However, we're actually consolidating the number of rooms by making them bigger and more high net worth individual focused, which is having its ripple effects with our day visitors that we'll talk about in a bit. But with the master plan for Resort World, look at they're putting in this Nintendo World, Minion Land. I'm loving all these places now because of my two little boys. They're going to have to go over and visit there. But they're really expanding that out. They're doing a lot of these interactive spaces and different things with the aquariums. So they're investing heavily. I mentioned earlier the Philippines. If you look at Solaire, just built out Solaire North last year, very different offering, a very high, someone say a far too high-end offering for the Makati area. However, it's doing okay, and now they're aiming for a phase 2 in the original Solaire. Okada has a lot of work to do. They need to totally renovate, but they're focusing on it. And City of Dreams is contemplating moving along. The deal there is not the same deal as they are doing in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is an asset-light deal, where they're more like, if you would imagine, a managerial contract of a hotel. They'll go in there and manage it, as opposed to building and owning and managing. So I think that City of Dreams is more inclined to do that moving forward, and don't see the City of Dreams original model as something that they want to replicate in the future. And then in some of the other areas, you go up to Clark, what Hannah's doing is unbelievable. And the airport up there has now got 6 to 8 flights a day, depending on the day of the week, directly from South Korea. They are packed with high-end players from his neck of the woods. They have a construction company back in Korea, so they're very shy about talking about the gaming business back home. He doesn't actively go out there and advertise gaming back in his home country, but it's tremendously successful, and they're expanding. They've also captured east and west and north of them a huge market that wasn't served before, with the largest Marriott ballroom there for weddings and family functions and business events, where people don't want to go all the way down to Manila. They're capturing a huge amount of non-gaming market there. And then you got the banyan tree coming on. They're doing tremendous stuff. And the casino is being expanded slightly, but they're also adding more golfing amenities. New Star down in Cebu is doing quite well too. It's bringing an interesting full offering. It had a bit of a shady start because they had individuals who were never in the business before. They brought in some experienced people to help them, but they were sticking to their methodologies of building malls, which was their experience, as opposed to doing an integrated resort. So there's been a lot of cracks in the service delivery, etc. So one of the big things over there is PAGCOR rules the roost with regards to they are the legislator, but at the same time they run a number of casinos. They run about 47 casinos throughout Philippines, in all the different provinces up and down. But that's been agreed that they're going to decouple, and they're going to just be a regulator, and they're going to sell off those 40-odd casinos. Now, that's going to cause mayhem. You're going to have 40... If you can imagine, like some of the smaller SGM casinos that hadn't got a lot of maintenance over 20 years, you've got old carpets, the air conditioning's not great, the lighting's not brilliant, the machines are very old. You've got a load of these that they are now looking at, and what they're doing is they're investing a huge amount of money now with all the gaming slot machine companies and upgrading the product, and they're upgrading the insides of these places to get them jazzed up and looking great for a quick sale, which is going to happen over the next couple of years. Now, the thing is, when you've got a state-run entity like that, not all of them are very successful, but they will all survive under that regime. As soon as they go out into the wilds of competition, how many will last will be the question. So you'll have individual investors and a lot of people who are in different business in the Philippines trying to get into those casinos. Some will succeed, some will fail, but it's going to be a lot of fallout over the next few years. You might go from 46 down to 12 that actually work. Who knows? But it'll take a while. It was huge passion over the last couple of years for online gaming in the Philippines. There was a lot of flexibility in the rules. And we had the famous and infamous Pogos, who it was deemed were doing a lot of illegal activities, so they were shut down, rightly so. And then they moved to a different model called PIGO, which is inland gaming operations. But what's been discovered now is a lot of the POGOs had just slipped over and put a new hat on and called themselves a PIGO. And so they're still trying to chase this down and get it right. So there's still a lot of inconsistencies going. But Pagcor was getting like 50% of his revenue from online over the last year or so. So they were really in love with this model. But what's happened as of late, they've taken, if you're familiar with Gcash, is one of the main ways of, if you don't have a bank in Philippines, you use Gcash. They pulled the ability to use Gcash on a lot of these PIGO sites, and it's had like 80% reduction in revenues overnight. The whole thing is you had individuals who weren't that wealthy in provincial areas borrowing from other people to go on and gamble. And it was just getting out of control. So they think socially it's not right. So they're pulling that back. But what you're seeing now as well, as apart from these 46 that are going to come on the market over the next couple of years, you're seeing a whole switch. You don't see the VIP and junkets going there anymore. They basically left with the POGOs. And so you're now focusing more on the mass, and you're bringing in South Korean and Japanese play as much as you can for the premium mass. New properties are being added. You got this West Side City coming up, which has been a bit of a mess, but it's been taken over now by Newport World Resorts, which we think will get it over the line. And then SM, who do the big mall company, big mall family company, and the Robinson Group, who are overseeing the New Star, they're going to move up beside Han. They see great opportunity there, so they're going to be building out great big properties up there. So there's a lot of upgrading going on. South Korea, I think when Inspire came along, the offerings that they brought to the market were extraordinary, and they did a big shake-up for the other places. So the Kangwon Land, who can bring in the locals, and Paradise City felt a bit jaded all of a sudden. So now they're in massive renovation mode, even though Inspire, their financial difficulties and everything else are another story. The facility and the offerings are quite remarkable. So for example, the event center they have, they're now the center for K-pop entertainment. They do over 70 shows a year now in that specialize in K-pop. So you've got people coming in from all over the world to see those. And this is the avenue they have in their mall that Paul Stillman said people will come in with their kids and they'll sit down and just watch the show in the corridor, sitting on the floor. So really nice and new things that were brought in there. It's very much like an upgraded Vegas style integrated resort. Vietnam, lo and behold, they're doing all sorts of amazing things these days. So they did a big test. You know that locals in general can't gamble in Vietnam. So they did a test down in Phu Quoc in the Corona Resort over a year and a bit. And they've deemed now, they're coming to the conclusion, we believe, that if you can afford to go in for $100 US, we give you 24 hours, fine. So that's going to be open for we think in the next couple of years. It's not certain. But the Ho Tram Strip was one of the first ones there. And they're now putting in another $1.2 billion. Hoi An the same, 1.5 to 1.8 billion. And then the Sun Group just announced that they have been selected. I didn't know there was a selection process, but they've been selected to do the Van Don. So they're a partial government entity, right? But they've done this bidding, and they've won the bid for this big integrated resort in Van Don in Quang Ninh. It's 70-year license, very nice. It'll be about 9 years to build it out. It's big enough, 604 acres. And it's in the Van Don Special Economic Zone. So that'll allow them to do a whole lot of things they can't do anywhere else in Vietnam, which is very handy. And they're also, the Sun Group went in and helped build out this international airport and the cruise port and the expressways. So it was a public-private investment to build this whole thing and all routes to it. So all roads lead to Rome type of thing. This could potentially be very attractive to people within that catchment area, whether it's a 1 hour flight, 2 hour flight, whatever. And then, you'll see expansions going on in the other places. Japan, my favorite subject for 2 years. I was back and forth to Japan trying to get this going, and then I just pulled on the brake. Okay, so now they're saying it became a political hot potato. If you wanted to get voted in as a mayor or not, you said you wanted an IR or you didn't. And that basically ended a lot of people's political career or kept them going. So it became so politicized, and all the requirements that came along with putting in the bid was so convoluted. So you would have to come along as an IR developer, approach one of the potential regions, put in a proposal jointly with them. When it was finished, then present that to national government for approval. And so you'd have to spend millions to get this thing together. If you want to do a proper plan and get it over the line, it costs a lot. So as you know, all the big players went in there. They were all really excited about some areas versus others. The big boys everyone wanted Tokyo, but Tokyo wasn't on offer. So they said, right, we'll go for Yokohama. It's right next door. It's close enough. We'll go for that. So everyone was putting their effort into that one. Didn't happen. The new mayor came in, said, we're not doing it anymore. So everyone pulled out because they didn't want to go to the other ones that were on offer. Sun City was down trying to get Wakayama. Casinos Austria came in with a conglomerate from Hong Kong to try and get Sasebo, which is next to Nagasaki. So they all, the one in Nagasaki failed. Just wasn't accepted by the government at all. Even at a provincial level, the plan wasn't enough to bring to national. But it's now been announced that the 2 other IR locations are still open, and they're about to consider reopening the bids. So they're asking provinces which ones are interested. And what seems to be hot to trot right now is Hokkaido. They think they want to go for it. Nagasaki with the Sasebo wants to come back into the game and try again. And surprise, surprise, there's rumors that the mayor of Tokyo may be interested in putting their name in the hat. If that happens, the floodgates will open. They'll all be back. Do you remember I said I didn't like Japan? Well, I've changed my mind. They'll all be back in if Tokyo comes back on the map. It's a long shot because the person still has to get voted in, but it's there. I had a lovely slide on Thailand. Now I've just got a big, just stop. We all wanted to do something over there. We were over there running around thinking this was going to be a fabulous destination. But politically, it's just not going to happen for the moment. So all I would say is, let's put the brake on. As long this Prime Minister says, as long as I'm in, it's not going to happen. So it may, this is in the works for 20 years. I don't think the initiators are going to give up that easy. They'll come back and try and get back in and elected. I think you might see it in a couple of years coming back up, unless this current person gets moved out quicker than we expect. I love what's going on over here in the UAE. As you know, they set up this body here called the GCGRA, based in Abu Dhabi. Jim Murray, the former head of MGM in Vegas, was put in as the chair originally. But what's interesting is each emirate, 7 of them, are authorized to grant or deny a casino operation. So they decide whether they want to or not. Because a lot of people are out there saying, oh, well, are they doing it? I heard they're not doing it. Da, da, da. Well, I'll show you something interesting in the next one. The GGR tax and the royalty rates haven't been disclosed for each of the jurisdictions. And they are said to be perpetual as long as you don't mess up and go against the compliance regulations. And they've also stated that the lottery and everything else. But this is on the application. If you go in, I want a license in the UAE. This box down here is interesting. List the emirate you wish to operate in. That's on the application form. So that's the answer to your question. Now, they haven't put all the terms and conditions out there, but what they're doing is, so, well, what are you offering? What do you suggest? If you come in and say, well, I want to go to this one over here, well, what do you offer? Put it on the table. If the deal's good enough, we may consider it. That's the interesting thing about there now. But as we'll see in a minute, I don't think most of us even knew that these offers were on the table when Wynn announced it was going to be building in RAK, right? So they're over there and doing this tremendous property. Construction's well underway. 3.9 billion will be open. It'll be open quicker than MGM Japan. They've been at it a lot longer. There's 1,500 rooms, 22 villas, 7,500 square meters of my space, a theater, and everything else. But in addition to that, they've registered the Marjan Strip, Arabian Strip, and the Encore Marjan Island. So the idea is, they're going to build more. So, you know, the partners they're with built the Burj Al Arab, so they're not shy of money, and they're a huge development company. What's rumored is, when you see this, they just bought another 70 acres. There's room to expand, build more, and they may be going towards what we were talking about earlier, what COD is doing, like a managerial contract model, where they will, some property developer will buy, build under their instruction, and they'll operate it for them, which is a new thing. Could you imagine the equivalent of Hilton with Wynn name everywhere casinos run? Well, first of all, you got to find a place that allows the licenses. So very interesting. Now, our other friends, MGM, were floating around Dubai for quite a while, and they had proposed a non-gaming resort back in 2006, and they did a groundbreaking and moved a bit of dirt one day, but never did anything since. And we're all wondering what's going on. Jim Murray floats into this regulatory body, and 3 months later, MGM puts the hand up and says, we're not interested in Dubai, we're going to Abu Dhabi. I wonder if that was a coincidence. But anyway, they're off with a new proposal in Abu Dhabi to build integrated resort with their 3 hotels, 1,500 rooms and everything else. So it's looking nice. But that's moving along very fast. Want to look at some of the competitive regional venues. Stadiums and stadium capacities are important if you're talking about entertainment and the big sports events, etc. There's some huge ones around. If you look at the Kuala Lumpur, 87,000 capacity, Jakarta, 82. Then you come into Hong Kong right next door. They've got the Kai Tak with 50,000, the Hong Kong Stadium 40,000, 14,000 at Asia World Arena. A lot of spaces, right? Then you hit the size of the Kai Tak Park there. Look, they spent 31.9 billion Hong Kong dollars on this. So they put a good solid investment in it. And they have the main stadium and the dining cove and the villages and the sports grounds and the central squares and all of these wonderful, wonderful facilities. And it works really well with the retractable roof, so it's year round, and versatile pitch. You can do lots of different things on it. And 30 bars and catering outlets. Very, very nice. Now we look into Macau. We're doing nicely. What are you laughing at? Venetian upgraded multi-purpose arena, very nice, 14,000 capacity. They upgraded and put a lot more VIP facility in there, fair enough, nice. Then we got the Londoner Arena, 6,000 capacity, amphitheater style. You'll have all the NBA in there. Yeah. That's keeping a lot of people very busy. The Galaxy Convention Center, doing well, 16,000 capacity, 40,000 square feet, doing nicely. And then we've got our equivalent to the Kai Tak Center, our outdoor performance arena by Liz Boetta. There you go. Our concrete slab, yes. 50,000 capacity that all the acts keep cancelling as soon as they send their front people over. Green Day was supposed to be there. They sent their people in front. They said, "You joking me?" And they said, "We're out." And I would say this is not competitive. Let's just put it that way. Emerging competitive airports. I think this is really important, and there's different models that people are following to make this happen. I think a lot of the success in different places are because of lift. So we keep talking about one thing. If you think about international visitation is a key priority of the government, okay. So if they're not coming from Hong Kong and they're not coming by land from China, how else are they getting in? Because we don't have a deep water port. So they're going to have to fly in. So what investment are you putting into the airport to bring that lift to Macau? Now, the plan is just not where it needs to be. So if you look at Changi alone, just Terminal 5, right? They're going to increase annual capacity from already 90 million to 140 million passengers. And they're going to be linked to 200 cities versus 150 today by 2030. That's some movement of people and bodies. And I don't know if you ever see there's posts by the Changi Development Division, where they've now put in anybody who has more than a 5-hour stay in Singapore gets a free tour around Singapore to various sites. The innovation that they're putting in there is just incredible. All the use of AI and VR and everything else is just crazy and very, very state of the art. They've 70,000 rooms, by the way. We're only at about 45,000. And there's 5,880 rooms on the way between now and 2029. They're not stopping. At 18.5 million tourists, so it's pretty nice. Now, you wouldn't think much would come out of a country like Manila, where they maybe don't have the same resources as Macau and the same resources of Singapore, but it's what they did was, again, a public-private alliance. And there was a deal struck with a 50-year concession with San Miguel Aerocity, so that's the beer company. They're going to go to a 35 million initial capacity, up to 100 million upon full completion, with 4 runways and rail and road links and 4,000 person car park. 12.5 billion US investment by 2029. And the way they phased it, if you look at their phasing, it's beautiful. They get a huge impact early on, and then the other is out over time. So, Macao Strategist playbook. So what do? We're seeing all this going on. We got to sort of react in some way, shape, or form. But reacting isn't good enough, because you're going to be 3 years behind. And if you're just going to build what they have, you're old school. So I think we have to look forward in a few areas and really look towards what we can do bigger, better, and bring the best of together. So I'm looking under a few different areas. So under the areas of entertainment and sports as a headliner, we need a permanent signature attraction, I believe. I think that having a 55,000 stadium is something that is a long-term strategy, could be accomplished within X number of years, and could make a big difference if it's linked properly to the light rail and bus depots and airport, etc., but not sitting out on its own. We have to move away from just these once-off concerts where you have the customers coming over from mainland China, taking a public bus, bringing a wheelie bin with them with their outfit for the night, going to the concert, then leaving on the bus and going back and staying in Hengqin. That is not dropping any money to the bottom line. And why are they doing that? Because it's too expensive and you don't have what they need available to them in Macau. Beautiful figure from Macau Business Today. I love your quote on we've now got 57% day trippers in Macau. And the day trippers spend less than 700 MOP. The overnighters are 3,700 MOP. There's a huge difference. And if we're small and we've only got this number of rooms, yeah, we want to capture them and bring them up, but it's going in the wrong direction right now. It's not going the right direction. They're coming in, coming out, and dropping as little as possible. So we have to turn that. And we can do that with this type of thing, with major sports promoters coming in. So, for example, we have NBA, for example, coming on. You have the UFC. But I would hazard to say that's very US-centric thinking. We're in Asia. Do they really fall over backwards in this neck of the woods to go to an NBA game or a UFC fight? Would they not be more interested maybe in one championships fight if they're in and around this region? So I think that we need to look at who we're working with. Chinese, Southeast Asia, and international sports leagues that can really drum up some solid numbers with the right connectivity. We want to really also look at immersive experience by creating unique social media worthy attractions, amusement attractions. So when you look over at this one on the left, the Qiddiya Entertainment City. Now, if you look at some of the developments that they're saying in the Emirates, they're just so fanciful. Like we heard about the line, which was going to be 178 kilometers long. They realized it's not going to work, so they pulled it back to 2.4 kilometers long. So they were hugely ambitious and maybe they weren't realistic. So some of this stuff, we'll take it with a pinch of salt. But if you look at what they're doing there, you're talking about an area that wasn't known for holidays and destinations and our local tourism. So they're building these places. This one is 334 kilometers area, 5 zones: resort core, city center, eco zone, motion and golf. Jack Nicklaus and Nick Faldo were involved. There's water skiing, wakeboarding, all this sort of stuff. They're really going forward and doing it full on. When it comes to MICE, look at the comparisons there. Hong Kong does quite well. Singapore does quite well on revenue generation. Macau is nowhere near it because we don't have the numbers and the volumes, but we have the potential. But the reason why it's so important is because you do bring in 3.2 times the spend from a MICE visitor than you do from a regular tourist. Why? Because they're on an expense account to come there to do business, and they'll spend a bit more and they'll stay longer until the business is done. So they're much more of a captive audience with a expense account, basically. But we do need some immersive technology to be integrated into what we're doing. We've still got pretty boring run-of-the-mill MICE spaces in some situations. There's a lot going on. I'll show you some examples in a second. But using augmented reality, virtual reality experiences make a big difference. Hybrid-ready infrastructures. So it's got a lot of physical and virtual collaboration going on and broadcast quality streaming. AI-powered personalization. So customized agendas and matchmakings as you go through the show. I experienced that in a couple of the shows I was at recently, and it's just incredible where it really optimizes your time and your day. I don't see that happening enough here on the ground, and it needs to be. If we want to be state-of-the-art and attract the best conventions, we've got to keep up with it. There's one or two trends happening in the MICE industry, yeah. So we should be setting the trends, not just following them. So even if I look at this is a list of the biggest trends from 2024, for example. Under planning, strategic design, technology, marketing, they're doing things that are really making their events stand out. These event planners and these industries want people to come to their event and not others. So they're doing really special things. They're doing these preference-based suggestions. So if they say before, I want to go to seminars or I want to go to the after drinks parties, they'll guide you in the right direction. Best personalized experiences possible and real-time content and connections. So you can actually know, oh, this is about to start in 5 minutes, and you'll get those notifications on your phone because the power of this mobile is just getting more and more and more. Retailtainment is really moving from, I wouldn't call what we have here traditional malls, but you move from traditional malls to the standard IR experience, to then the experiential retail, to what they're now calling retailtainment. So what really that boils down to is the future retail is about selling immersive experiences that happen to include shopping. And they use this phrase OMO, which is online merge offline, and integrated with the smart devices. So that's not happening enough, but it could happen a lot. So if we do this technology integration, you're going into a shop, you have smart mirrors where you stand in front of them, you can try on 15 outfits in the mirror through virtual reality in a few minutes, then it'll bring up, oh, these shoes go well with that. So you've got a whole different level of experience. You've got these cloud shelves and price labels, where if, and I'm talking about this from mainland China, it's all over the place. It's in some places in the West as well, but it's really incredible what they're doing. The weight on the shelves tells you if you need to restock or not, and the robot will come out and restock that item. If they want to keep up with the competitor next door, they can automatically, remotely change all the prices throughout the store for the items. And so it's something it's so dynamic, it's so futuristic, and it's everywhere in China. If you look at just those examples I have listed down there, you have the new South China Mall in Dongguan. They're welcoming over 100 million visitors a year. You got the Golden Resources Mall. You got this one called the Mix in Shenzhen, very high tech, and this one called Joy City in Beijing, which is very youth and smart retail oriented. So you go in there and you have unmanned shops, for example, with facial recognition and all this. And if you think, I'll ask a cheeky question, how many of you got something delivered by drone this week here in Macau? That's been going on for how many years over there? And then they're supposed to come over here and be impressed by what we have to offer. I'm sorry, we're way behind. We're absolutely way behind. And you got a situation now where we're talking about looking at individuals' reactions to retail offerings. They will now, their patience has just gone down to 0. They will not queue. They go into a shop now, they will take the QR code on their phone if there's a queue of more than 3 people, and it will be in their house before they get home, because they can order it through their mobile app. And so these are the type of things, if we want to be real and we want to be serious, we've got to get off our high horse saying we're giving the best of this and the best of that. It's not true. It's not true. We're way off in many areas. And I think we got to really think about our customer. It's not a Western customer. You can't be US-centric with this. You can't be thinking, right, this is what we do in Vegas, therefore it's the best. I remember hearing that in the boardrooms way back. You know, they don't understand entertainment. We'll teach them. And we have a place called Zaya still sitting there with cobwebs in it.
Right.
So, you know, hey, tried his best, but the customer didn't want it. And so, you know, the thing is, it's very important to keep up with where they are, what they want. And if you want them to come here, it's got to be as good as or better and at the right pricing. Strategic alliances, I think this is one of the huge areas for us to make a big difference. When we talk about entertainment, the sports, trying to get year-round sporting events, training centers, to create a year-round hub. Leisure and recreation, we have signature attractions, if we can, with multifaceted destinations. Wellness is a huge one that I think we're totally under utilizing at the moment. I think that there is a push to do traditional Chinese medicine. I think there is an opportunity for us to be a fabulous hub for that. But what I think is needed is we've got to do it as well as some of the other medical tourism destinations. The number ones being Thailand and Singapore and India and Singapore with all the different offerings they have. They all specialize in something different. But each of them have partnered with world-class JCI and ICO accredited partners like the Glen Eagles or the Mount Elizabeth or the Cleveland Clinic or Bumrungrad to do something really special that people are willing to fly for. And the comparisons are there when you see it. They do these all-inclusive packages where you get your flight and your accommodation and your treatment and then a relaxation stay afterwards. And it's just like, wow, this is brilliant. And we can do that for the medical side, but we can also do it for the wellness side. And, you know, we have a very unique advantage. We've got amazing integrated resorts. So you combine those two together and do them right, we could be very attractive. Now, I saw some efforts in the past with them trying to bring in the Mayo Clinic, for example, into Venetian. I think politically it didn't work, but the reality was they needed to have licenses to operate. They needed visas for doctors to perform those procedures, etc., etc. So other countries have gotten around that by creating medical free trade zones within their jurisdictions that allow certain procedures and everything else to happen within there, and they're regulated and they're very controlled and everything else, but it doesn't interfere with the rest of the system. Yet you can still create this amazing offering for guests. I think that's a huge opportunity. Luxury lifestyle. There's a product that we've looked at before. There's a place in Singapore in the airport in the duty-free zone called the Mint, and it's a place where you can store your artwork and your jewelry and your gold and everything else. And it's got an auction house inside, and you can also, if you fly into this duty-free zone, you walk in, meet the person you're buying or selling it from, you exchange it from your storage areas and fly out again, and there's no tax, no obligation, and it's modeled on what happened in a lot of these places in Singapore and Luxembourg, or in Switzerland and Luxembourg from the past. But these are great opportunities as well. But you also have these experience centres for luxury cars, the Range Rover experience centres you'll see around the world where you can get in and try and go over mad terrain, or the Ferrari centres to get a bit of speed, or these VSTOL drone experiences that you see over in Shenzhen. And again, the big benefit of the strategic alliance, of course, you get straight to market very quick with a lot of expertise and backing, and capital burden is taken away. So I think it needs to be done more, but it's not done enough. But it's got to be the right ones. We can't be just bringing a product from another continent and thinking it's appropriate for this one. It's got to match what's needed here. This we just get into a little bit of the AI stuff, but technology is the real game changer. And I think that this sentence is so true, that the most valuable real estate is no longer the casino floor. It's the smartphone in the guest's pocket. If we can get to that and work with that without trying to get them to gamble on it, you're going to create amazing experiences. And really, the future of technology will create, it'll really leverage that technology to make the experiences very personalized, which is it's at a highest level it's ever been. If you look at AI and big data analytics, if we leverage some of the AI intelligence to analyze some of the data, you can really go to a whole other level. It's getting very scary. I'm sure you're aware that ChatGPT has now incorporated Booking.com into it. So you can now say, give me a hotel in Paris next to the Champs-Elysees at less than 150 quid a night, with a swimming pool. Oh, and it'll pop back with the offers right for you, and you click there. And this is just going to continue. But are the IRs using that yet? No. So some of it's at the forefront, even though it's out for a while. But this is something that we really need to incorporate if we want to be leading in the future. I would say if you want to catch up first and then lead in the future. The mobile first guest journey, I'm going to go through that in a second, but immersive experience with integrating AR and VR technologies for a resort-wide experience, and make it as entertaining as possible when you bring them through the place. There was a lot of consultancy studies came out to talk about the impact of personalization, and you get huge increase in revenue and guest satisfaction, and the average spend goes up, etc., and your costs are reduced as well. And with predictive preferences, you can start to guess what the guest might want. If they've been there the last visit, they went here, there, and the other. Maybe they want to do that again, and you can give them other alternatives. And real-time experience optimization and emotional intelligence. There's ways on slot machines these days to predict if a person's about to walk away. And as a result, you can give them a nice little bonus offer to maybe incentivize them not to stand up and leave. And so that type of stuff is being built in and it's being used, but a lot of people don't know it's there, but it can be used to a much, much larger extent. When I talk about the seamless journey, I'm talking about from pre-arrival, arrival, on the property, all the way to the post-stay. And it'll help you increase revenue and enhance the loyalty and the operational efficiency. But to do that, if there are 170 different systems running concurrently inside the Venetian, each one of them has to have an integration with certain other software packages. And every time one has an upgrade, the other one has a new a new integration has to be built. It's very expensive and very difficult. So trying to create a super app has been like the holy grail for ITs here for many years, but it's still something that's being pursued by some. The problem is they'll buy a big off-the-shelf system, they'll put it in place, you'll customize it for your property. Within 6 months, it's in the property next door, so your competitive edge goes away. So the reason why they want to do a super app is because it'll be all ours, it'll be our way of doing things, and we can keep it going and hopefully stay 6 months ahead all the time. But to do that, you need unified data platforms, which is a huge issue. You got tons of this data being taken in at the slot machine, tons of data at the smart tables, RFID, and tons of information coming at the POS system in the restaurant. They're all separate databases, they're not speaking to each other. So the difficulty is now getting them all together, but it's an honorable pursuit that'll make a difference. And that AI-powered personalization helps predict what's going on. But on top of that, we got another couple of issues. If you look at some of the things that we experienced when we came here in the beginning, the team that came from America, there was 50 on the, there's a task force that was sent over. 39 of them had to get a passport for the very first time. And we had to rush it through Chicago. So culturally, they'd never been out of America before and came here. And some of them loved it and some of them hated it. But it is a reality when Western and Eastern come together that we need to keep in mind. And I think in many cases it's been forgotten where the marketing departments can't understand why the local guests aren't enjoying what they're offering. I think they're sometimes forgetting some of these these nuances that are very basic, like the Eastern and Western cultural differences. They make a big difference. So what I think is interesting. Macau's integrated resorts are a very unique fusion of Eastern and Western, but we're also private and public because we gotta work to the beat of the government as well to a huge extent, and so in order for us to get a strategy right, we gotta meet the balance of cultures and the necessities and requirements of the public and private realities here. You know, like the balance relationship. You're talking about Eastern emphasis on Guangxi relationships versus the very process-oriented push of a senior manager in an IT department. They often are a clash, and we often then have to work on our communication styles, how we do it. And one of the things that I thought was a nice way of putting it is, the future will belong to the IR that can create the third culture that makes the best of both East and West and forms the strongest private-public strategic partnership. I think you'll all notice in the 6 IR, some get on better with the government than others. Some seem to get what they're being asked to do and others don't. That's all part of this equation. Some are listening and some aren't. Some are saying, oh yeah, I hear you. And then they go do what they think is appropriate and they get the kickback. And so we've all witnessed that in different ways, shapes or form. So the next multi-billion-dollar bet, the future doesn't lie in replicating the formulas, but in boldly reimagining what an integrated resort can be. And the greatest opportunities now exist beyond the gaming floor. Maybe not because that's what we want, but that's what is required, and that's what we will be remade to do. By creating signature entertainment experiences, we can do that by leveraging technology and AI. We can do it by forming proper strategic partnerships with the experts that are needed in the area, the cross-cultural and public-private partnership teams, but ultimately structuring a public-private comprehensive strategic development plan. That doesn't exist. If you look at what's been done in other jurisdictions, you look at Singapore, how did they accomplish what they did in the time they did? We have processes here that are not as efficient as they could and should be. Is the government, is public and private really sitting down and really putting together a proper strategy and working together to make sure this is happening. I think that's still what's missing. And until that happens, it's not going to change. And you have a difficulty, of course. You have 6 integrated resorts, each competing with one another, who are reluctant to sit down at the same table and spill their great glorious plans for the next 5 years on how they're going to dominate the market, because the competition is sitting there taking notes. It's a very difficult thing to accomplish, but it still has to be done. And it can be done. But the golden age of Macau is not behind us. It's in front of us. But it won't be built on the formulas of the past. It'll be built by strategic thinkers, all of you guys sitting in the room. Because you're the guys who brought us from 2004 to 2024. Look at the difference in that, you know? You guys made that happen with the actions you did every day, the companies you ran, the people you talked to. And it's by pulling our thoughts together, this is what we're going to do to make the future of Macau come true. So, Macao Strategist, good luck.
I think we've got time for a quick Q&A. If anyone has a question they'd like to ask Niall. For me, I'm depressed by the fact that everyone's moving so fast and we're not. But I remain ever optimistic. Glenn, surely. Oh, you're an expert. Keith.
Yes. So talking about the development of Macau, and Macau's a small place compared to all these other places. But the one thing I'm surprised at, I just be interested in, you know, if you've heard it on the grapevine. So last year, the Jockey Club was closed, and it's a massive area with a lot of potential, and but I haven't heard anything. I mean, when the chief executive gave his policy address, it wasn't even mentioned as an area for development. They were talking about other places, but there's this whole area, the Jockey Club, and so the question is, have you heard anything on the grapevine of anything happening there?
My first reaction to it was when the slab of concrete was built. Why didn't they use the existing stadium at the Jockey Club? And their existing facilities were there. It was right there next to the railway. There was parking underneath, etc. And I tried to get some answers on why it didn't happen. And I absolutely got back. I've absolutely no idea.
Vested interests.
Yeah.
But something like that, you would need I'm going to say a world-renowned master plan for something like that. But do they go down that track, or is it just government officials?
The conditions upon which the Jockey Club license was extended was based on a very extensive master plan that they were going to build out a lot of different things around there, and they didn't happen. They were supposed to follow a specific timeline. They were supposed to invest X amount, and that's why they pulled it, apparently. So it was supposed to have happened by that by the ruling party and the ruling company, but they didn't do it. Yeah, quite surprising.
That's obviously a place for the future.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Great.
You know, that was a brilliant presentation. It seems, from an outside perspective, that keeping the unemployment rate in Macau among locals is kind of like this golden trophy that seems to be a very easy win for everybody. So the idea of protecting local interests. We saw the rapid closure of the satellites, which effectively will double the unemployment rate, despite the social welfare programs being sent to them. Do you consider these small incremental changes positive in the grand scheme of things. And I know, as the presentation has mentioned, Macao is behind in a lot of what it's doing. But would you consider these small steps at least anecdotally positive, or do you feel that these don't really move the needle at all, and that we're really lost in the bigger picture?
I think the employment question or employment unemployment question is right back to the objectives of public versus private. So in the public entity, they have to keep unemployment down and do everything they can to make that happen for social good. On the private side, you've got to keep employment at optimal levels to ensure that you're profitable and you can produce the outputs that are needed. That clash is never going to go away. And the interesting thing is, if you look in economic terms and you look at in the past, there was 1.7% unemployment. As an economist, they turn around, they'll tell you that's functionally zero unemployment. When you look at people transitioning from school to university, or from university to their first job, or taking time out to take care of an elderly parent or a child, that 1.7% is like gold for any other entity. However, I think that Macao has extremely high expectations with regards to what they can deliver and how they can deliver. And I also think it's a very important voting in platform for some of the politicians. So it's going to be yelled louder from certain podiums. And so I think it's an unrealistic expectation to get the unemployment down at such low rates and expect that to be a norm. Secondly, if we're moving from gaming to non-gaming, if there's going to be a reduction in employment in the gaming sector, you're going to have a variance in the wages. So, for example, an average starting salary for a dealer will be 19,000 versus a person who's working in a non-gaming and restaurant maybe between 8,500 and 12,500. That's a huge difference. But if you ask a Macao local to take on an 8,500 to 12,000 job, you're going to have a very difficult time finding out of that 1.7% pool somebody willing to take that on. And especially if it had been rumored, say, for example, in some of the satellite casinos, it wasn't as onerous on a person there to work. It wasn't as strict. It wasn't as heavy in the productivity scales. So they found it easier to work in one of those satellite casinos, but still earned a decent amount of money. It's going to be very, very difficult to get those people to take anything else but a dealer job, one, and two, for them to find a satisfactory job in non-gaming. And if you're in the non-gaming sector, like a lot of people in the room are here, if you're not running an integrated resort, you can't supplement your wages from the gaming floor revenues. And for you to even pay between 8,500 and 12,500 to an individual is absolutely crippling. And then added to that is you must have 6 locals for every 1 international that's brought in. You're putting in an impossible situation. So I think that the whole labour law needs to be reviewed, needs to be looked at. I think that you got to get to a realistic level of safety. And then you got to go and look at the 1.7% and see, are they really unemployed out of hardship or out of choice? And what can you practically do to turn it around? But I think there's a very unrealistic expectation that's placed on the IRs that flows down to medium and SMEs that is not tenable. Allegedly.
Thank you. That was a masterful dissertation in 30 or 45 minutes. And, you know, the one thing which Macau is really fortunate about is that we only have 500,000 permanent residents. And it's not difficult for Macau, at least in the past, to amass that huge fiscal reserves of 600 billion buckets. And to get 40 million tourists, mostly from China, to come in, basically those are low-hanging fruits. And as you mentioned, there's still a lot of them that are waiting to be admitted. And thus Macau need to compete at the cutting edge with all the best integrated resorts in the world. Or if the government would ask you, should we just stay where we are, make sure our local residents are all gainfully employed, they don't have to be cream of the crop, but hey, we're all making enough money. What will your response be? Thank you.
Very interesting. I suppose as a very capitalistic response, it's we're in business not for exploitation and or to the point of profit maximization to the detriment of somebody else, but we are still in business to get a return on our investment, to make some decent returns. And if we can do that by being more efficient and bringing in better products and attracting more customers, we should do that. It's very interesting to ask if the government wants to say, look, you've got an endless supply, just give them what they want at a very simple, basic level. There would be enough to go around. And what we saw in Vegas years ago was what we used to call the lower end slot machines were about 5 cents or whatever in Caesar's Palace. And some of the slot managers would say they're not worth the wear on the carpet to have those machines there. However, they brought in the masses and they still dropped pennies. And it was quite profitable because you didn't have to give them as much complimentaries, etc. So for example, if Macau was told tomorrow, have no more premium mass, because you guys are still playing around here. These people are only supposed to bring out 10,000 RMB. How come he spent 20,000 RMB on your table? You're now liable for casino because there's no junket to blame anymore or money laundering. It's getting to that point. But I think that what will help is with the request of all the tables to become electronic and smart tables. And we can also have facial recognition in some cases. We will be able to identify to the player exactly how much they spent. And then the next step is if we digitize the RMB and bring that in, we'll have total control over who comes in, how much they spend, where they spent it, how much they won, how much they lost. And then I believe it will be safer for mainland China to offer more visas and open up the gates even wider. But we can't handle the volume. We built the ferry terminal there in Macau in Taipa to accommodate 60 million. So with the borders for 60 million, we're struggling with 40 million in the other infrastructure around town. So I think until we're at a point where, one, we have the infrastructure that can handle that volume. But if we did have 60 million visitors, even at mass, we'd be at numbers close to what we were at in 2013. But I don't think the population will tolerate it, and I definitely don't think the infrastructure can tolerate it at this point. Some other major things would have to happen to allow flows and everything else around the city. But yeah, it's interesting. You could make this a full mass market and be happy forever, and the casinos will be laughing because you make much more money off a mass player than you do off a premium mass and a VIP junket player. Just need more of them.
Thank you. We've got
Sorry.
Joel.
Thank you, Niall. Very interesting presentation. I will take on the last question, and I'll ask you: isn't Macau's biggest competitive advantage, in respect to all the other Southeast Asian, at least, IR areas, which is actually this biggest advantage would be the massive population of potential market being funneled into Macau almost exclusively and able to be more or less controlled. is this competitive advantage the hindrance, the biggest hindrance to turning Macau into a real international integrated resort venue? We see in hotels, restaurants, etc. Menus are not in English. Waiters don't speak English. There's no policy in Macau to teach English as a first or second language. Why? Because we have this huge potential market, and we don't really need to develop much more. There are policies in place, there are talks and intentions, but really we don't see anything being done for it. So, what's your opinion?
Well, I'd have to agree with all you say. That market and the blessing that we have being right next to mainland China is just, it's unequaled in the world. A number of years ago, I went on a trip to Belarus, and they wanted to try and replicate something similar, having proximity to Russia, and for Belarus to be the Macao for Russia that we are for China. And a lot of people looked at that model and thought that was beautiful. A lot of other jurisdictions would love to have the flow of Chinese in. And it's a blessing in one way. The tap can be turned on and off. But then it is something that gives way to complacency, where you do say 85% of the market's coming in. Why should we bother doing all these sophisticated things for English speakers or whatever else, or international markets that aren't coming? So stick to the bread and butter. So it is very tempting to do that. And I think in many ways, a lot of the casinos are doing that. The ones that are maybe pushing out the envelope are trying to differentiate themselves from the other 5 by doing something that's a unique selling proposition, and or to show to the government we are really pushing this non-gaming element. But the problem is, you might be laying out all these things in front of people. If they want to play baccarat, that's what they're going to do, because they can do all those other things back in Hengqin or whichever city they came from. So a lot of these non-gaming efforts are falling below expectations, because they're giving. I remember Pansy House saying once in a meeting, here's a bunch of you Western guys again offering what you think Chinese people want, and they don't, and you haven't a clue what the culture is and what they need. And I think that's actually still happening in a lot of different aspects. So one, it's tempting to go for that, but you still need to differentiate yourself to get them to come to your property versus another. And I think there's still a lot of experimentation going on as to how to do that. And a lot of effort and resources being wasted in that pursuit, because a lot of them are first time being here and maybe one-time visitors from mainland China. All they want to do is get to a casino first time ever and enjoy it and then go home. They're not interested in the other elements. So a lot of it is wasted effort, unfortunately, and on one time, because you don't have a lot of repeat visitors. You just have to look at the exit trash cans at the borders, where you see all the membership and loyalty cards just piled up inside. They don't want to be recognized when they go home that one, they came and gambled. And when they do the visitation surveys, if you look at them, they're still done to this day. The border entry, reason for travel to Macau, visiting friends and relatives. And the percentage coming for gambling is 2%. That's still, for 20 years it's been like that. Do you think it's true? I doubt it. So that's the only thing they can do. That's why they're coming out to do it. So I think that's the reality of our world.
And we'll run.
Niall, how are you doing? Oh, thanks. I thought the presentation's spot on. All the things you were highlighting about all the integrated resort for region competition, spot on. Please, I need a copy of your PowerPoint. It was great. My lecture tomorrow night is sorted. But in honest, I think as I look, I mean, I'm trying to be very learned people here, all very qualified and so I'm just thinking, what should the question be? And I think it's not a question, it's probably just an inquiry. As we, you know, the 10-year gaming licenses, and you're looking at all these big projects, some of them are very longer term as you look towards, you know, if you were sitting, you know, looking at the bigger pictures, is what should be done, right, in the short to medium term to deliver upon a diversification. And there's the issue about like, where is Macao in the Greater Bay Area? Where do we, you know, excel, you know, in the competitive landscape? So if you were to position yourself 2 or 3 years down the track from now, you know, because the clock is ticking towards, you know, the 10 years. Now we're nearly, as you get through towards the half time, and you look back at your KPIs, what we've delivered on, because the last half is, you know, how we're going to work towards, you know, and things that you must do now, but strategically in order to deliver halfway through towards, you know, the end. So where would you say is out of all those slides, or should we prioritize, as you said, like the 2 or 3 top points, would you say, in your discussion? And again,
The most important one is that last bullet point there. Structuring a public, private, comprehensive strategic development plan. What does that mean? We have to get the right key players from all industry and government departments to sit down in a civil manner, but in a very professional manner, to say, here's where we are, here's where we want to go, how are we going to do it together? Now, and listening with intent to make a difference. So, for example, I think that we have very practical and amazing planning in the 5-year plans coming from mainland. They're very experienced in doing that, and they get things done. I know if we stated we needed A, B, C to get done, and if the Macao government went and looked for cooperation on that, we'd get it. So, for example, we want to diversify beyond gaming. Great. They targeted 4 areas. Great. We said, let's say one, for example, we'll say IT. So we want to turn around from IT. We got to look at the competitive landscape. Who's the best at IT? Oh, I think it's Shenzhen. What makes them set out? They've got a free trade zone. What's the attraction for big IT companies to go there, or for Chinese companies to set up there? They got the skills they need, they got the licenses they need, they got the tax regime, they got the factories. Okay, we want to compete with them. How are we going to do it? So we have to set ourselves up by then designate a zone, designate budgets, look at the best practices and the laws they put in place, the regulations. What do we need for visas? What do we need for flow of materials in and out? How do we ship the things in and out of the place? And the whole infrastructure that goes with that industry. Then you look at who are the best in that industry around the world. And then you go to them and meet with the CEOs of each of those companies and say, why are you here? And what would it take to get you to come here? So Little Ireland is a great example, right? And we went around and we had no manufacturing, we had no raw materials. We could only move straight to services. So we had an advantage where we were part of the European community. Americans wanted to come in there, and we offered them a tax-free holiday for 5 years if they came and set up in Ireland. They gave them English-speaking employees, and they had then 10% corporate tax rate after the 5-year tax holiday. So all of those advantages weren't available in any other EU country. So we got Google, we got Intel, we got Microsoft, all of them moved. We can do the same here if we look at really, do we want to do this? Look at best practices and put best practice frameworks in place and proper entities which are government and private funded to make it happen. Number 2 example, bring in lift. So look at what they've done with Changi Airport and with what they're doing with the San Miguel thing with the public-private investment, and bring in the best consultants and do it properly. Even Vietnam now with the Sun Group. In Phu Quoc, they've just worked together to develop the international airport, and they half funded a new airline to ensure they bring lift in. So how does CAM and Air Macao fit into the equation in their current structure to make lift go through the roof, to bring in international visitation. So what I would say is, get everyone into a room, we put a full structure together, industry by industry, benchmark for best practices, put in a strategic quarterly by quarterly reviews of these things where you got proper OCRs where you're aiming for and KPIs that are measured with some accountability. Because again, you got different motivations. Somebody in the public sector isn't motivated by bonuses because they may not get them, versus someone in the private sector will. So we've got to come up with something that is a meaningful across the board set of objectives that people will follow because it means something to them. Anyway.
Last question with Sarge.
It's a very insightful presentation. So the question that I have is the immediate political expectation to invest in Hengqin. Do you believe that it will take the concession investment focus away from Macau to Hengqin? And if so, going to that comprehensive strategic development plan, what do you think that would be in Hengqin that would benefit Macau? Would it be something as simple as completing uncompleted hotels or converting unused office towers to hotels with a view to try and busing or connecting people back to Macau and using the asset-light system to revitalize our Olympic-level sports stadiums that are hardly ever used, and then ways of then connecting people into the concessions?
I think that Hengqin is an amazing opportunity. It always has been. I remember getting in trouble talking about it way back in 2004 when we wanted to do the golf courses over there. And our share price went up as a result, and we got in trouble for saying it. It's landed space to grow and expand. We could do an awful lot of amazing non-gaming amenities there. I do not believe converting office towers that were built as banks and financial institutions is wise or safe. If you know anything about construction, you don't build these things without the proper refuge floors, without the escape accesses. If somebody's staying in there 24 hours versus an 8-hour shift, what's going on over there is extremely dangerous. What I've been told is like 25,000 illegal, or well, 25,000 temporary accommodations are being provided over there under different legal structures. I don't think that that's a wise move. I don't think that's the future. But those offices and blocks, they're going to have to be used in some way, shape, or form. I think they could be used for other expansion opportunities, like IT related, like finance related, etc. But turning office accommodations into office buildings into hotels is quite dangerous. The other big spaces will be fantastic for your sports fields, your arenas, once we have that infrastructure built up and in place. So I think there's wonderful opportunities over there. I think there's a load of land. I think we have the opportunity, when we talked about having a medical free trade zone, for example, you could do that in a jurisdiction like Hengqin, where they're developing new laws to work in the Greater Bay Area, something that's quite unique. So we're lucky in Macau, we can have gambling, but possibly in Hengqin, we could have some of those other diversified industries ring-fenced and certain laws apply within them. So for example, you can bring in a US licensed doctor once a quarter to perform top-end eye surgery in this designated medical zone without having to get licensing from China and Macau and wherever else to do so. And I think there's huge opportunities there because they are still looking at building those laws and those rules to accommodate the integration of the Greater Bay Area.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Niall.
Nope.
As you spend your time with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
You can
Pleasure.
relax and even have a drink.
Very good.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Em.
Absolute star. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're a lucky draw.